But that's the only way that we're going to be able to get through this, is to actually understand, as we say at Bloomberg, the size and scope of this.
Well, and you have to understand, Bloomberg News reporting a great story, and they talked about New Jersey closing its first drive-through test site to people beyond the 1,000 already in line, and they may not even get swabbed today. Basically, it's just the demand is surging for tests, and this is what you're hearing from mayors, from governors, and from officials on the Corona task force about, only those that really need to be tested should be out there getting tests. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, Jason Kelly. We've got another city, as we know, and really state, Jason, that's in lockdown.
Well, and this is a really important story because a lot of what's happening on the West Coast is more and more quickly making its way to the East Coast. Let's go to Los Angeles now. Chris Palmieri, my fellow bureau chief out there in Los Angeles. Chris, great to have you with us. I know it is incredibly busy for you because the state of California, the governor, Gavin Newsom, declaring essentially what we heard Governor Cuomo here in New York declare today, effectively sheltering in place. Help us understand what's going on the ground in Los Angeles.
Well, yes, it was kind of a bizarre evening last night because first we had L.A. Mayor Eric Garcetti having a press conference where he announced much tougher terms, basically a sheltering-in-place order. And then an hour later, Governor Newsom ordering it for the entire state. So it became a situation where you wondered, did these people even talk? This is the first day it went into effect in Los Angeles. I took a walk around. I went to my supermarket this morning. It was a sobering sight. There was a line, people down the block, separated by a few feet. They were letting them in 5 at a time. The security guard there told me that was due to robberies. They've had frequent robberies. There was also security inside the supermarket, and they were out of toilet paper, and they were announcing that things that they were out of to the line. The rest of the city is eerily quiet. It almost feels like a science fiction movie. There's no cars on the street. This is, a city where it can take me 45 minutes to an hour to drive 6 miles to work. There's, a smattering, particularly in the afternoon, of people dog walking and jogging, and sometimes you see people wearing masks, but for the most part, eerily quiet. I went around to some other stores, some classic strip shopping centers that are all around the city. Surprisingly, quite a few of them are still open. I mean, there were, sandwich shops, dry cleaners. Those are all allowed in the order. I spoke to the owner of an Irish import shop. He does sell groceries. He felt that was okay by him. But there are some other businesses, a pawn shop, a Thai massage place that were at least had open signs and sort of questionable interpretation of essential services.
Chris, I do wonder, too, it sounds like people are certainly taking it seriously because we've heard, we just heard from the New Jersey governor and even from the Massachusetts governor saying, you got to take this seriously. You cannot be out and about. But we've had stories about folks in Florida, younger generations, out there and congregating in large groups. What are the conversations that you're hearing? Or it sounds like people are of all ages are taking it seriously. Is that the case?
Certainly, from what I'm seeing, I see the people just literally moving off of the sidewalk as you're walking to into the street just to keep within 6 feet of you. I haven't been to the beach yet. I probably will take a drive up to Hollywood and Highland and check out what is sort of our kind of premier tourist destination there on the Chinese Theater and the Walk of Fame. But it's definitely quiet in Los Angeles today.
All right, Chris Palmieri, thank you so much for that update. Obviously, anyone who's been to Los Angeles, even the way you describe it, it's hard to get your head around. In New York City, from what I hear, I haven't been there in a week in downtown Manhattan or in Midtown Manhattan, rather, where our office is. Carol, I know you were there earlier this week, but I think a similar scene, and certainly it's going to get even more so now that we have this effective shelter in place. That was Chris Palmieri. He is our Los Angeles bureau chief, longtime resident of that city, so really knows what he's talking about there, Carol.
All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Let's check in once again with Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Jason, President Donald Trump and his coronavirus task force provided updates for the fifth day in a row at the White House on new developments in the battle of the coronavirus. Trump spoke to reporters and was optimistic about the drug hydroxychloroquine for possible use in fighting the pandemic.
I am a man that comes from a very positive school when it comes to, in particular, one of these drugs, and we'll see how it works out. I'm not saying it will, but I think that people may be surprised. By the way, that would be a game changer, but we're going to know very soon.
Globally, the virus has infected more than 246,000 people and killed more than 10,000. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo moved to join California today in ordering nearly all residents to stay in their homes. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy reports 890 positive coronavirus tests and 11 deaths as of today. That's up from 742 positive tests and 9 deaths yesterday. But Murphy says that is bound to happen and should not lead to increased anxiety that getting ahead of the virus is made possible by testing. Oregon Governor Kate Brown wants a statewide eviction moratorium to suspend enforcement on expired automobile tabs and driver licenses, and has asked the federal government for a 1-year extension for compliance of the Real ID Act. There is other news. Superstar Placido Domingo has resigned from the U.S. union that represents opera singers after 2 investigations found sexual harassment allegations against him to be credible. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Let's get the very latest on the markets now from Bloomberg's Doug Prisner. Doug.
Thank you, Bob. We're at 41 past the hour, so we have about an hour and 19 minutes to go in trading today, and the equity market is trading near the worst levels of the session. Bob was talking about Governor Cuomo ordering all workers for non-essential businesses basically have to stay home now for the foreseeable future. We also heard from Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey, indicating his state is going to tighten the screws on social distancing. Earlier in the day, President Trump invoked the Defense Production Act. He said he has directed certain companies to begin producing medical supplies and health care equipment. Also today, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying he wants to pass a massive stimulus bill by Monday. Legislation could top $1 trillion. However, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was saying the GOP bill is too small. He wants broader cash payments. Earlier today, the Fed, along with some key global central banks, announced a coordinated effort to beef up dollar liquidity swaps. This is another move designed to keep dollar liquidity moving around the world. Seems like everybody wants dollars right now. Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is up, but it's less than 0.1% higher. We've got a weaker yen, 111.31, weaker euro at $1.641. A 10-year Treasury down 8 basis points, yielding 95 basis points. If you look at the equity space, we are near the session lows, as I mentioned, and the volume is very robust because we have the quadruple witching effect today, the expiration of options and futures happening simultaneously. Real estate stocks down, so too energy, given the price of crude oil is down more than 10% right now. Active crude settling the New York session 22.53. The Dow weaker by 2.8%. S&P down 2.7%. NASDAQ comp weaker by 1.7%. You're caught up on markets. Let's get back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug Krisner, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. Now, this story, it's the cover story of the magazine this week, a must-read. It's about finding the cure for the coronavirus and the researcher who helped save millions of lives from HIV, now trying to do the same with COVID-19. Rob Lingrith is healthcare reporter at Bloomberg News. He's on the phone in New York. Also with us, Joel Weber, editor of Bloomberg Business Week, on the phone from Brooklyn. This is a great story, and this was an individual, Rob, to be quite honest, I didn't know much about. Tell us about him.
Well, so he first rocketed to fame in the 1990s when he was one of the Dr. Ho, David Ho. He was one of the key people who tested the HIV drug cocktails that dramatically lowered the death rate for HIV and AIDS. And he was the first doctor to be named Times Man of the Year back then. So he's kind of one of the world's most famous living AIDS researchers. And now he's, changing much of his lab to focus on rapidly finding a treatment for the coronavirus.
And so, Joel, how did this figure into the way that you guys have been covering this story? I mean, it's a very powerful cover, and I have to say, an optimistic one at a time when a lot of us are feeling pretty down about our chances here.
Well, look, to be clear, they're not they're not near a cure like right now. This is not a plug and play moment. Right. But this is an example of a line of coverage that we're rapidly working on, which is what are our chances to actually get something that looks like a treatment or a cure. And, David Ho is sort of a huge name in a certain world, and that was why we wanted to put the spotlight on him. But to be clear, and Bob can speak more to this, there are similar efforts going on in lots of different places right now.
Yeah, so Bob, talk about that, because, it does feel like we are getting this sense of urgency, and maybe it was going on and we just weren't paying attention to it. But this week, and maybe it's because a lot of this is being pumped up by the president and others, that there is this, in a very productive way, sort of a race for a cure here.
Yeah, that's absolutely kind of what's going on. And I think, what happened was, when it was still mostly in China, I think there was a sense of a wait and see a little bit among some of the big drug and biotech companies, because you just didn't know, whether this thing, like so many other epidemics in the past, was going to fade a little bit. And by the time they had treatments, no one would need them anymore. But that's clearly not going to be the case. This thing is around. It's here to stay, even if it, say, for example, if it subsides a little in the summer, or even if the social distancing stuff works and then slows it down a lot, the disease isn't going to go away. There's only been one virus in the world that's ever gotten out to such an extent where you've totally eradicated, and that's smallpox, and that wasn't a respiratory virus.
Isn't that incredible when you think about that? All the viruses in the world, in the history of the world, and we've really only eradicated one of them, and that shows you what we're up against here.
Bob, one thing I also thought was really striking in your story is that, you talked about the work that Dr. Ho has done, and that, when SARS was around, he was, had developed antibodies, but by the time, it got wrapped up, everybody kind of lost interest in finding some kind of treatment for it. And he didn't need a lot more money. I think it was about $20 million you write in your story. I do wonder, is this different? Because we are anticipating that the coronavirus in some form or another, or COVID-19, this is going to be with us for a while.
Yeah, I think this will definitely be with us for a while. And I think what happened with SARS and some of the other coronavirus outbreaks, there's another one in the Middle East called Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. What happened in the past is we got a false sense of security, and that some of those, didn't really fully take off, and we were able to suppress them before they really caught hold. But this one just spreads more easily, and it's just out there in the world now, and so we really do need to develop a treatment. And the long term, I think it is a virus. We have a track record of eventually developing treatments for viruses that are successful. So I think long term, there's reason for optimism. But we must be realistic in that a lot of these treatments, they aren't going to come like right now when we want them. Right now, what we have, as we say in the story, is kind of soap and social distancing. Those are the main tools we have right now.
And so help us understand, Bob, you understand this so well, that sort of the medical, pharmaceutical, sort of industrial complex. And I'm not saying that conspiratorially, but it's a complicated world, and you do have some of the biggest companies attacking this. How much cooperation is there? How much healthy competition is there? Help us get a sense of the broader landscape here.
Well, yes, you do have all sorts of companies starting to do all sorts of things with both drugs and vaccines, and it's hard even for someone like me to keep track of, frankly. And I really don't have a good sense of, what the competition, what the cooperation is now, because so many different new things are starting up all at once. There's companies like Gilead Sciences that are testing drugs. There's companies like Regeneron Pharmaceuticals that are also working on antibodies. The Regeneron is another company, and I believe there is some cooperation between Dr. Ho and Regeneron on at least some of the projects. But yes, there's many things being started up very rapidly, and it's a very muddled and uncertain situation, because many of these things are just kind of going into testing now. We really don't have a good sense yet of which ones are going to turn out to be most promising.
So, Bob, can you bring it back to Ho for a second real quick, and and I know I can hear Carol already just telling me to, go ahead and wrap it up and keep.
No. We got
That's a great question.
We have good time.
What is the approach that Dr. Ho is using, or thinks he'll be able to use to take a number on the coronavirus?
Yeah, so Dr. Ho is basically leveraging some of the years of expertise and learnings they've gotten from developing treatments for HIV successfully. And in fact, one of the main approaches he is taking is to try to attack some of the same enzymes in the coronavirus that were also present and successfully attacked by HIV drugs. So he is basically applying some of the learnings to make kind of pill-style drugs that could block the replication of this coronavirus and possible other future coronavirus strains. And that's one of the main things he's doing. And he's also separately in a separate project working on antibodies against the coronavirus based on blood samples from patients who've recovered. So he's kind of doing several separate projects at once in hopes that one of them comes through.
What I'm curious about too, and Joel, we thought this was such an important story. We're going to give you a lot of time today. I even went on surveillance yesterday and teased up this story. What I'm curious is, what's his time frame? Because I think as Americans, we're watching the task force updates, the coronavirus task force updates. There's a lot of health officials talking about, drugs on the market that are already out there that maybe could be used. I think there's a lot of confusion about, exactly what is the medical cure, when is the medical cure potentially going to be out there? It's not anytime soon.
Yeah, well, the short answer is, we don't know. And the fact is that, most of these things we're talking about are not yet in human trials. And the things Ho is working on are probably more than a year away from human trials. There are a few things at other companies, such as a Gilead drug, a Gilead Sciences drug, that are in trials right now. But if you look back at Ebola, we actually developed successful treatments for Ebola, but it took a while. So it's possible we could get lucky in one of these kind of off-the-shelf things that they're talking about right now. One of these off-the-shelf drugs, which was kind of already out there, may work to some extent against this virus. But the likelihood is we'll probably need to develop targeted, customized treatments that are targeted right at this virus to really have something that really works well.
Joel, I want to, if I can, just take an opportunity since we do have you, we've got a couple more minutes, just to ask you, how it's going, with the magazine and things like that. We really haven't had a chance to catch up with you on air about sort of putting this all together and keeping on top of the news. Help us understand what's going on.
Well, we've never been this remote before, and so I think that part is just a challenge for doing work in general. And I know everybody else knows what I'm talking about right now. It's just like you go stir crazy after day 2, I think, and here we are on sort of day 4 and counting for most of us. So I think that's just the real thing. And we've been able to do a lot of the work that we need to remotely so far. So knock on wood, everything's good on that front. And we just have a ton of stories that we have in motion that we're really excited about. Not unlike, some of them are a lot like Bob's, where it's just like, let's get into the science of how do we get out of this mess. But look, this story is touching so many facets of our lives. You think about the economic implications of this and what the bailout chatter is all about. This is by far the story of 2020, and look, it's looking like it could be a lot longer than that.
Well, I just think of what you guys did last week and making it completely the issue and saying, talking about the lost year. You're spot on. Bob, if I can just bring you in for one last question, or we've got a little bit more. David Ho, is he talking with the folks in Washington? I do, the magazine has done some great coverage about talking about the importance of coordinated efforts, certainly on a financial and market basis, but even more so in terms of attacking the virus on a health basis. So I do wonder, did David Ho, what was his perspective or take on that? That is he being reached, called upon? Does he feel like the health community is really being brought in together to work on this?
Well, he does. I don't know the extent of his contacts in Washington. I assume he probably does have lots of them. We were lucky to get into Dr. Ho, and a few days before New York, see him in person before New York, kind of totally shut down. And, like many, he has so many demands on his time right now, like a lot of the researchers responding to this, that he's, become very hard to get through to at all. It's sort of this frazzled sense of, 24/7 trying to find something. But he has lots of contacts around the world, in China, China and Hong Kong and elsewhere. And that's kind of one reason why he was able to get this effort up and running so quickly, because he is very well connected to the virus research community with lots of people.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Bob Langreth. Robert Langreth is his byline. He's a healthcare reporter. He's got the cover story this week in Business Week, and it's an important one, all about the race for a cure. Really a must-read. Telling you about someone that maybe you've heard his name, but the backstory here, there's some great details about even Dr. Ho sort of learning things about bats and their role in all this and how many there are in the world and whatnot. So our thanks to him, to Bob Langreth, as well as, of course, to Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, both joining us on the phone from their respective homes. And you're at your home, Carol Masser. I'm at my home. Coming up, we're going to continue to look at this story, just as Joel said, from a number of different angles.
Got it. And I do recommend that everybody go online, because I've been reading through the stories in the magazine, and it's just pretty incredible what everybody has put together, working from their home and elsewhere. Now, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, we will continue. If you are listening on Bloomberg 1061 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. Quick check on the markets, if I may, because we are definitely off our highs of the day. Right now, we're down about 650 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, down about 3.25%. S&P 500, same story, down 3.2% for a decline of 76 points. And the NASDAQ down about 2.2%. That's 157 points to the downside. Stick around. We're going to check in on that bond market, take a look at some of the day's equity news and also economic news. This is Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
all new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
Dad wanted to get Mum a beauty treatment for Mother's Day. The kids wanted to do something homemade. So they compromised. And now Mummy's got no eyebrows. Don't compromise. With Asda's Isabella Bouquet flowers for just £5, you won't have to. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability.
Dave presents an evening of exclusive stand-up comedy in association with Calm, featuring Joel Dommett.
I was like, Dad, you love my brother more than me. He went, I've just got more in common with him.
Kiri Pritchard McLean.
They're either holding an ugly baby or a heavy fish. I don't know why it's those two.
Judy Love.
Where's all my big girls? Okay, some of you been lying to yourself.
And John Robbins.
Never got my head round why 100% humidity wasn't water.
An exclusive stand-up special. Comedy against living miserably. Tuesday at 9 on Dave.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
Anyone can help beat cancer. Will you? Sign up to Race for Life now
in partnership with Tesco.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
3 p.m. on Wall Street from Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York. I'm Doug Krisner. Well, the day began on an up note, but right now the equity market is trading very near session lows, with the Dow, the S&P, each down by more than 3.2%. NASDAQ Composite is weaker by 2.3%. Earlier, Governor Cuomo of New York ordered all workers at non-essential businesses to stay home for the foreseeable future. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy saying his state will tighten the screws on social distancing. President Trump invoking the Defense Production Act. He said he has directed certain companies to begin production of medical supplies and healthcare equipment. At the same time, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying he wants to pass a massive stimulus bill by Monday. Legislation is expected to top $1 trillion. We had the Fed acting early with a couple of key central banks globally in a coordinated action to beef up dollar liquidity. Right now we've got a stable dollar with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index very little changed. It's produced a weaker yen at 111.19 and a weaker euro at $1.0659. The Fed also expanded its money market operations to include some municipal debt. Equity volume today very heavy. We have the simultaneous expiration of options and futures contracts, so-called quadruple witching, volume nearly double the 30-day average. Big slump in crude oil today. WTI down nearly 11%. We settled New York trading the regular session at 22.53. Russia reportedly raising production and signaling a commitment to that price war with Saudi Arabia. And interestingly, the oil regulator in Texas has been invited to address the OPEC meeting in the month of June. Over in the bond market, 10-year Treasury down 2 basis points in yield. We're at 94 basis points. Walmart is planning to dole out as much as $545 million in early and special bonuses. That would amount to about $300 per employee, those who are working overdrive, or I should say in overdrive, to keep shelves stocked. Shares in Walmart right now down a bit more than 3%. You are caught up on markets. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. This portion brought to you by the Indiana Economic Development Corp. The Hoosier State's legacy of innovation provides the perfect backdrop for big thinkers and big ideas. Visit estatethatworks.com to take your business to the next level. And Carol Masser, what a Friday. What a week. I feel like, you just heard Doug say, as you and I think individually were looking at futures this morning, and then even the open, you thought, okay, it's going to be a little calm, maybe a little bit of green to carry through the day. Yeah. But those headlines, I think, coming out first from the governor of New York here with this effectively sort of shelter-in-place order, that long press conference with the the President of the United States and the virus task force, and then following up that with the Massachusetts governor, the New Jersey governor. I mean, It's just a relentless stream of headlines and news.
Well, absolutely. And I think, this is a reminder that it's going to get worse. And this is the story that we've all been talking about. Everybody's been clamoring for more tests, which is, I think, really important. But as we take more tests, we're going to see those numbers in terms of cases certainly pick up. And that is certainly, going to be troubling for everyone. And that's why you're having these states and governors locked down. We should talk, though, a little bit we talked about the equity market, Doug Krisner covering it, but we've also got to talk, Jason, about what's going on in terms of the economy and the bond market.
We absolutely do. So let's bring in our team. Yelena Shalecheva back with us, senior U.S. economist, a frequent guest on this program. We love talking to her. She works for Bloomberg Economics. She joins us on the phone from New Jersey. And Josh Wright, another fave, chief economist over at iSIMS. He is joining us on the phone as well. We're all remote, all trying to make sense of this. Josh, I want to start with you. Just give us the snapshot from your perspective. As we go into the weekend, what is the most important thing we need to know economically from your perspective about where we are with this crisis?
Well, we've got to find out what's going to be in the fiscal package. I mean, so much of we're revising our forecast daily at this point. I'm looking at numbers that I put together at the beginning of the week, and you have to tear it up. And so much depends on how quickly we respond to this crisis and whether or not we get the money in the right hands in order to make sure that businesses have the cash and the confidence to keep people on the payroll, to give them the support so that once we do hopefully get out of the lockdown situation, or all the restrictions and the physical distancing, that the economy really is ready to hit the ground running again.
Just want to mention a redhead crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Mexico's central bank cutting their reference rate 50 basis points to 6.5%. We continue to see central banks around the globe taking initiatives to help out at least the financial side of this crisis. It's interesting, Josh, that you say that, and I do wonder, Yelena, come on in on this. Yelena Shaletyeva, our senior U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics, on the phone from New Jersey, also with us. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin sees the proposed Senate Republican stimulus measures too small in some aspects and wants to include direct payments to more individuals to really mitigate the consequences, according to those in the know. This is some of the reporting that we've been doing here at Bloomberg. I mean, what from your perspective, following the economy, do you see as giving, the most impact in terms of what kind of assistance we can get from the government?
Yes. Hi, Carol. So I think the longer we wait, the more money we will need, basically. So it really depends on how fast they will act. If they can put their act together and, sign this into a meaningful package, then it could probably be enough, at least for the near term. I think the 1.2 trillion package is comparable to growth in the economy. So back in 2019, the economy grew something like $830 billion. So I think 1.2 trillion is comparable to that. So, but the longer we wait, the bigger the price tag will become. And if we wait another 2 weeks, we might have to talk about different amounts here.
And so, Josh, pick up where Yelena left off there. I mean, the most important elements of this to you, what are you going to be watching for? Because this is a story that it feels like is going to play out over the weekend.
Well, you've got to make sure that you're supporting people in the sectors that are most in need right now. So restaurants, hospitality, the people who work at companies where the horizon is very short of how much cash they're holding. We can think about this kind of through the lens of the financial crisis we had in 2008, 2009, and in some ways that we're seeing get reiterated this time around. You've got these companies, these institutions that are so important economically, but they're operating on very thin margins, and we need to give them the confidence. We need to give them the cash and the confidence so that they'll be able to continue to do their business. A lot of them are just going to go out of business if they don't have, and they're going to have to lay people off if they don't believe that they're going to make it through.
Right. This is about just quickly getting cash to individuals and to businesses, particularly those small businesses. Josh, when you look at your projections, as you said, I wrote a note, revising forecast daily. I mean, this is the environment that we're living in because this story is moving so quickly. It really explains why we've seen such quick moves, certainly in the financial markets, and so steep. How do you see it? A second quarter downturn, a third quarter downturn? What kind of visibility do you feel with any confidence?
Well, yeah, confidence is a tricky question here, but certainly a sharp contraction in the second quarter. The third quarter, that really depends on the developments we see in just the next 2 weeks. There's a very good chance still that we'll have a sharp bounce back. It depends on exactly what happens with the virus and what the contagion there requires in terms of a public health response. The longer we're shut down, in some ways this could be kind of like the debates about shock therapy in emerging markets. If we take the medicine up front, we might be able to pull out of this really quickly. If we are slow to respond, then that's going to extend this whole problem. But there are a lot of other unknowns as well. Even if we are very effective up front, we may flatten the curve, but we could also push it out so we have multiple waves. So we have to look for what kinds of pockets we might have. We might have partial shutdowns in the economy in the second half of the year. So that's why, although I think there is a good chance we'll have a sharp bounce back in the third quarter, it might not be as sharp as we're hoping for.
Right.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Great perspective from both of you, as always. Josh Wright, Chief Economist for iSIMS, joining us on the phone, as was Yelena Shalechev, Senior U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. Carol?
Yeah, let's get back to World and National News headlines, and let's bring in once again Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Jason, as coronavirus sweeps through the country, disrupting normal life, a disturbing discovery about the most vulnerable. It was revealed at the daily White House briefing by Coronavirus Task Force Coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx.
From Italy, we're seeing another concerning trend that the mortality in males seems to be twice in every age group of females.
New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said today that despite what the federal government has said about states being able to have ample access to masks and other health emergency supplies, New Jersey does not.
We continue to have outstanding needs in personal protective equipment. We put a big ask in. We've gotten a fraction of that.
That contradicts statements from President Trump just a short time earlier about states having access to what they need. At that same briefing, Vice President Mike Pence said the administration has suddenly discovered more ventilators.
In our recent discussion with anesthesiologists, we've literally identified tens of thousands of existing ventilators that can be retrofitted and converted.
It was a notably testy President Trump who led today's briefing, at one point berating a reporter who simply asked what Trump's message would be for Americans who are afraid of what's happening.
What do you say the Americans were scared, though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
The increasingly angry president went on to berate the questioner for bad reporting and sensationalism. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Attention, all units on tactical.
Boys, just pick a track. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car, so don't drive him to distraction. Let her mate concentrate.
Dad wanted to get Mum a beauty treatment for Mother's Day. The kids wanted to do something homemade, so they compromised. And now Mummy's got no eyebrows. Don't compromise. With Asda's Isabella bouquet flowers for just £5, you won't have to. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability.
Imagine winning 10 grand.
Yes! With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years. Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Monday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life and the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Martin here runs his own building business. He's got a tool for everything. Nail gun for nails, screwdriver for screws, and QuickBooks for finances. QuickBooks Smart Scan makes doing his tax return easy, automatically checking for the most common errors.
Save up to 60% for the first 6 months. Offer ends 9th of April. Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
Anyone can help beat cancer. Will you? Sign up to Race for Life now, in partnership with Tesco.
Make life easy with Sky TV and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q. Discover Sky originals like Intelligence.
I think we can learn a lot from each other.
Right next to Netflix originals like You.
It's nice to meet you, love.
Find them all side by side on Sky Q. So, get Sky Ultimate TV for just £25 a month. Easy. Visit sky.com and join today. Ends April 30th. Prices may change. 18-month minimum term on Sky Signature. Set up £20 requires Sky Q connected to broadband. Correct at March 13th. Terms apply.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Business Flash.
Well, the day began on a bright note. How things have changed with about 43 minutes to go in the session today. The equity market at its worst level of the day. A lot of the reversal occurred when New York Governor Cuomo ordered all workers for non-essential businesses to stay at home for the foreseeable future. Then we had President Trump in his press conference indicating that he has, in fact, invoked the Defense Production Act. And in the Q&A, the president said he's directed certain companies to produce medical supplies and healthcare equipment as a way of addressing the shortages that we're seeing at hospitals across the country. Majority Leader McConnell saying he wants to pass a massive stimulus bill by Monday. This legislation could top $1 trillion, but Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says it's too small and he wants broader cash payments. At the same time, the Fed, along with other key central banks, announced a coordinated effort to beef up dollar liquidity. It's another move to keep money flowing, particularly U.S. currency. Seems like everybody wants cash, and they want to be in dollars. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is up 0.1%. Weaker yen, weaker euro. 10-year Treasury yielding 94 basis points. WTI crude oil taking a shellacking today, closing New York trade at $22.43. That's markets. Let's get to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. Well, tracking the path of COVID-19, it is incredibly helpful in learning about the virus and how to fight it. Andy Picozzi Pekos is professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at Johns Hopkins University, Bloomberg School of Public Health. Joining us on the phone from Baltimore, the Bloomberg School of Public Health, supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Andy, nice to have you here with us. Tell us a little bit about tracking and how easy it is and what kind of coordinated efforts are we seeing around the globe to be able to do that in a really smart way?
Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of now sites that are ramping up their testing. You're seeing a lot of reporting of this data in almost real time, and now there's multiple web-based sites that you can look at to sort of see where cases are occurring and the rate at which they're increasing in different areas. So I think tracking in terms of accessibility of the data is getting pretty good, although I think we still need to ramp up and do more testing in many places, particularly here in the U.S.
So, Dr. Pekos, help us understand how this is spreading. What are we learning that's new and different? How much do we know about this that's just based on previous models? I think all of us are just trying to get some sense of where this goes next, and I feel like you're much smarter than I am about understanding that.
Well, we're all learning along the way here. I think, the main thing that has changed probably over the last month significantly has been we went from assuming that most of the infected cases are showing severe disease, in other words, strong enough to reach out to some medical care, to now getting a sense that most of the people are not getting disease that's so severe that they would necessarily seek out medical care. And what that does is, it's great because obviously it's telling us that there's fewer cases are going to be severe in terms of the overall number of cases, but it makes tracking and keeping and monitoring for people who are potential spreaders very, very difficult, because you can no longer say symptoms are going to bring you into a containment program.
And so is that why, I do feel like we're getting this renewed or maybe new sense of urgency from governors and mayors and whatnot. Is that essentially why all this social distance, this is a dumb question maybe, and an obvious question, but is that why this social distancing piece is so important, because you've got a lot of unwitting carriers out there?
No, I think that's absolutely the case, and we're starting to realize how many of those there are, and so the sooner you can instigate some of these, or implement, I should say, some of these methods, the more likely you are to really make an effort to make an impact in terms of the number of cases. And it has to happen when there are low numbers of cases around, because if you can find 5 or 6 really sick people, you've probably got a huge number of people who are spreading in the community.
Dr. Pekos, what is it that you find so troubling about this virus in particular?
Well, I think it's exactly that. In certain populations, you can see mild disease, yet in other populations, like the elderly, like those with secondary medical conditions, like respiratory conditions, this virus is still very, very deadly. Initial numbers here in the U.S. are showing that there is a little bit more severe disease in younger populations. So I think that even younger populations need to think carefully about, or need to think seriously about this problem, because it's causing disease across the spectrum. But again, there are small groups of populations that it causes very severe disease in, and we have to find ways to protect them.
What does it mean for the future? And I think what's striking about this too is that folks are saying this is going to be a virus that's going to be with us for a while. And I know a vaccine may take until 2021 perhaps to find that out. But I do wonder, are we entering an era where we are just going to be dealing with a whole new class of viruses?
Well, this virus, is going to be a challenge for us. We don't know how transmission is going to change over time. I think we look to countries like China and Korea and Japan as countries that have found a way to control the number of cases. But what we now don't know is how long we have to keep these public health interventions in place to maintain this virus at very low levels. That's the big challenge going forward, is not knowing how long some of these efforts are going to be in place.
Yeah, that seems to be the case too, and I would imagine you studied this so extensively that you also, I would imagine, fear a moment where people say, okay, even if it's like a slight all clear, people just sort of go nuts again, and they're out at bars and they're doing their thing and they're taking vacation and all those things. I have to think that's something we're worried about too, right?
No, there are multiple examples throughout history where public health interventions have worked very well, but then they're either relaxed too quickly or people start to not follow them as stringently as they should, and you start to see these rebounds of cases that come in. So, the flattening the curve that everybody's talking about these days that you're seeing on social media is a very, very real thing that we have to work towards using these public health interventions, because that's all we have right now.
All right. We really appreciate your time. Dr. Andy Pekash is professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health, as you can tell by the name. The Bloomberg School of Public Health, supported by Mike Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and, of course, the parent company of this radio station. Let's head just down the way from where the doctor is in Baltimore to Washington. The mayor there, Muriel Bowser, holding a press conference.
That our healthcare providers in the hospitals as well as in the primary care community have expressed to us. DC Health has the capacity to access the Strategic National Stockpile, which is a federal asset that is designed to help communities when there is a shortage in supplies. We have made an initial request for specific supplies such as N95 masks, surgical masks, gowns, face shields, gloves, and other PPE that is necessary to care for patients suspected of having COVID-19 and those who have been diagnosed with COVID-19. The district understands the importance of acquiring this personal protective equipment and supplies and distributing it to healthcare providers most in need of this equipment. We have received an initial allocation and distributed the initial 5,000 surgical masks to healthcare providers most in need. We have also made a request for 10,000 swabs or test kits for healthcare providers and are awaiting a response from the federal government. Lastly, I want to highlight other things that we know of a critical importance as we watch what is happening around the globe. On a daily basis, we are in contact with our hospital community to better understand what the need what the capacity is in the hospital system if we were to experience a surge. We ask about the number of hospital beds that are available to care for our residents, with a special focus on the number of intensive care unit beds available, as well as ventilators that would be available if patients were to acquire assistance with breathing during their hospital care. We have been able to assess that due to patients heeding our message of calling ahead when you are sick, getting an assessment from your healthcare provider, and staying home if you do not have a medical emergency, our hospitals are able to become even more prepared in the event that we have a surge in the demand of healthcare services related to COVID-19. Because of this ability for our patients and our residents to use the healthcare system responsibly, we have assessed that we will be in a position to be prepared for that increased demand for healthcare resources. We have also assessed that the number of ventilators in the District of Columbia exceeds the number of ICU beds, which tells us that our hospital leadership are thinking very creatively about how to use the space in their healthcare facilities in different and new ways to respond to COVID-19. I want to assure you all that I have been in contact with all of the hospital leadership. I have conducted site visits. We have been in touch with the workers who are on the front lines to be able to understand what their needs are, and we will continue to do so as we work collectively to respond to the impacts of COVID-19 in the District of Columbia. I thank you for your time and attention, and I'd now like to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Paul Kine for further updates.
Thank you, Dr. Nesbitt. Thank you, Mayor Bowser, for your leadership during this time. Throughout this evolving situation, Mayor Bowser and her administration have made school-related decisions based on the best available science and in close consultation with DC Health, with the Chancellor and DCPS, OSSI and the State Superintendent, and charter leaders from across the district. In an effort to help stop the spread of coronavirus or COVID-19, the district's public schools, as the mayor mentioned, will remain closed through April 24th. Classes will resume on Monday, April 27th. This decision reflects the extraordinary circumstances that the district and the nation is facing together, and we realize that families are being presented with new challenges, and we will continue to offer supports to families as we work through this. The CEO of Friendship Public Charter Schools, Pat Brantley, is here with us today, and we greatly appreciate her partnership and that of other charter leaders throughout this dynamic situation. And we want to reiterate that it is our full expectation that public charter schools will follow this updated DCPS operating status. To be clear, this extension of this closure comes with an expectation that teaching and learning will continue. The district will continue to work with schools to build upon and expand consistent methods for remote instruction of students. Distance learning is new for many of our schools, and we are working to address challenges where they exist to increase the rigor and effectiveness of this distance learning. And equally important, our message to families and students, as the mayor mentioned, is that it is very important that you stay at home, that you do not congregate in areas outside of the school buildings. Now, clearly, this decision will impact our statewide assessments. This morning, the U.S. Department of Education invited states to apply for waivers, and OSSI will seek a waiver for the 2019-2020 school year to cancel statewide summative assessments, including PARCC and DC Science. On meal sites, beginning April 1st, the district will add 10 meal sites for all students, bringing the total meal sites at DCPS locations to 29 across the city, which are complemented by many meal locations at charter schools. These DCPS sites will provide lunch and a shelf-stable breakfast for all residents under the age of 18 on weekdays between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And residents can find the full list of meal locations at coronavirus.dc.gov under the Meal Sites tab. On related facilities, the current operating status of our public libraries and recreation centers will also be extended, and libraries and rec centers are expected to reopen also on April 27th. And effective immediately, all DCPS and DPR playgrounds will be closed. The district's outdoor public spaces, including parks and fields that we cannot lock, will of course remain open, but while they are open, we are reminding residents to continue practicing social distancing on these locations. This includes standing 6 feet apart and enjoying these spaces only with members of your immediate family and not with other kinds of group play or group activities. Lastly, a word on early childhood centers. This unprecedented situation is presenting us clearly with new challenges, and one of these is the need to ensure child care for children of our critical healthcare workers who are serving on the front lines. We expect shortly to stand up additional child care options for our critical healthcare workers in the coming days, and we have had very productive discussions with the Hospital Association and the Primary Care Association to identify the specific needs. We will share additional details with those families soon. Right now across the city, we have more than 50 child care centers that have continued to operate to meet the needs of their families, and most of these centers are our home-based locations. We encourage additional home-based and other providers to consider remaining open to meet the needs of families. And if you have questions or require additional information on how to do so safely, please reach out to your contacts at OSSI directly. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to Deputy Mayor John Falcicchio, Acting Deputy Mayor John Falcicchio, Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Paul. My name is John Falchicchio. I'm the acting deputy mayor for Planning and Economic Development. Today we're joined by Ward 5 council member and chairman for the Committee on Economic Development and Business, Kenya McDuffie. Council member, thank you for being here and for your partnership. One of our top priorities while we still carry out the response is to start thinking about the recovery. And so that recovery takes on two approaches. One is to help organizations, and the other to help individuals. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we'll help organizations, and then Unique Morris-Hughes, our director of the Department of Employment Services, will talk to you about how impacted workers can access resources. And so for organizations, we have broken it out into three types of aid, and that is federal, direct local, as well as local programs. And so for the federal aid, we announced that Mayor Bowser had submitted a declaration of economic injury to the Small Business Administration earlier this week. That declaration was accepted by the administrator, and it is now possible for DC-based businesses, small businesses, to apply for SBA-administered loans at the disasterloans.sba.gov website. Also today, we're announcing the direct local relief program. It will be a $25 million recovery fund, funded again with local dollars, and we're planning to open up the application process early next week. This program will provide short-term financial assistance to businesses, nonprofits, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals. The local grant program will be administered by DEMPET, the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development. We're also working with our sister agencies to identify programs that can help people at this time of need. Sister agencies including the Department of Housing and Community Development, which will use federal funds like the HOME program and the Community Development Block Grant program to provide direct rental assistance to low-income residents and economic relief to businesses in our neighborhoods. More details about DHED's effort will be announced in the coming weeks. We also have programs within the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. One such program is the Collateral Support Program that ensures small businesses with limited access to credit can get loans they need to stay open and invest in their business. That program is currently up and running and can be accessed through the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking website. As Mayor Bowser emphasized, we're all in this together, and we're all going to get through this together. That includes our small business community. I want to bring up Director Unique Morris-Hughes of the Department of Employment Services to talk about how workers in D.C. can access unemployment benefits.
All right, you have been listening to a press conference led by D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, number of deputy mayors, and the head of the D.C. Health Department speaking there as well. And Carol, as you mentioned, as we were sort of going back and forth through this, the nation's capital has not been maybe as aggressive as some other cities have been, but it sounds like they are trying to get there.
To be fair, they just reported their first death, Jason. I believe that just came out, and they have 72 cases. So I think, it's cities that are trailing what we're seeing in some of the major metropolitan areas like in New York, perhaps, and of course like on the West Coast. So I think that's why we're seeing some of that. But we are hearing more of those same systems and same shutdowns being put into place. All right, let's get a check on your top business stories, and let's get a check or two on the trading day. Just got about 23 minutes to go, Doug Christner.
Yeah, we're going to end at this point very near session lows. We're not far from those levels right now with a loss in the Dow of about 2.8%. But anything is possible given the fact that it is a quadruple witching Friday. We have the simultaneous expiration of options and futures. Big volume today. In fact, we're nearly double the 30-day moving average. S&P 500 down 3%. The Dow, as I mentioned, weaker by 2.8%. NASDAQ comp down 2.5%. Look at crude oil today. WTI in New York trading falling 11%. We settled 22.43. Russia has reportedly raised output, signaling a commitment to a price war with Saudi Arabia. And the oil regulator in Texas has been invited to address the OPEC meeting in June. The dollar pushing higher on a day where the Fed, along with key central banks, globally announced coordinated action to beef up dollar liquidity. 10-year Treasury now with a yield of 90 basis points. That's a quick look at markets. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly here in the New York suburbs. Carol Masser out in New Jersey. This is Bloomberg.
There is a light, don't let it go out.
Wow, that'll take you down.
You too.
Absolutely.
That's a great song. I've heard them play that live. It is powerful.
There is a light, don't let it go out. And then think about it. You kind of have to take that attitude after everything we've been through in society and in the stock market in the past month or so. And the reason I picked that one is, there is a light, at least to the folks at LPL Financial, when they look at what's happened to stock prices in relative terms. Now, the way that they're going about the comparisons, they're taking the earnings yield, which is like the inverse of the price-earnings ratio. So if you have, a PE of 20, it's a 5% earnings yield. And then comparing that with the yield on 10-year treasuries. Beginning of the week, you were talking about a gap of about 5.7 percentage points between the two. That was the widest since July 2012. And what that tells you is that stocks were getting a whole lot cheaper relative to bonds. I mean, you go back, a month, you would see a gap of less than 4 points. So it's really gone up as stocks have gone down. And then the chart goes back over the entire history that's available of this comparison to the early 1970s. And you only really see a few periods where this particular yield gap has been wider. So, their argument is, and I'm quoting here, is that U.S. stocks may be near their ultimate bottom. That's the point. And in their view, we may already have kind of accounted for a recession with the drop in stocks that we've seen so far. And if you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I will get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Dave, to be fair, this crisis is unlike any other. And I do wonder how you feel about looking at, relationships like between the S&P 500 yield and the Treasury, the 10-year yield. How reliable do you feel they are right now until things really start to settle down, or until at least we feel like where we can start to look at the other side of the impact of the virus?
Well, I've had a couple of email subscribers raise the question, about earnings, because when you take a ratio like this, the earnings yield is based on past results, and future results, who knows what they're going to be. Analysts haven't really adjusted all that much for the effects of the coronavirus. We know they won't be that great. But beyond that, if things are awful, then you'd figure that there would be even more people piling into bonds and treasury yields might fall. So it's not like, the indicator gets invalidated necessarily because of the outlook for earnings here.
And so, Dave, as you look back, on this week, who knows? I was going to say we'll look back on this as an historic week, but
we're not done yet, Jason Kelly.
Who knows what next week will bring? But I do wonder, as someone who's watched the markets for a long time, what will stick with you about this one, other than some of the historic drops?
Just how relentless it's been. Sure, you've had some up days, but you think about 1987, that was really one day when things kind of fell apart. You've had other days like that. You think about the flash crash a few years ago as an example of that. That this has just been one decline after another after another. And it was like the chart I did, just yesterday, pointing out that if you looked at the 10-day volatility of the S&P 500, it's the steepest it's been since 1987 and since 1929. That's what stands out. It's just been, mind-boggling sort of day-to-day moves.
I mean, you just take a look at the last couple of weeks. We're down almost 14% this week on the S&P 500, and that's after we lost almost 9% the week before, and then go back to the week that ended, wrapped up the month of February. We were down more than 11%. I mean, I agree with you, Dave. Like, we've seen market swings, but just, again, how swift and how steep all of this has been, it's hard not to, really just kind of take your breath away here.
Right, and the other piece of it is this started when the S&P 500 was at a record. Right. I mean, at least you sort of had some early warning. You go back to 1987 as an example. You had close to 2 months of declines before you got to that Black Monday crash. So it didn't really sneak up on people the way it did this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of headlines that have crossed. We are hearing that Illinois Governor Pritzker also ordering a shelter-in-place order for that state. We heard your governor, Carol, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, essentially closing down all non-essential businesses. And we just heard from Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser and her team as well. I mean, this is starting to really become much more real across the country.
Yeah, exactly. You've got the Army looking to convert about 10,000 rooms in New York for the virus. You've got Southwest Air just canceling about 1,000 daily flights. I mean, it is shut down as we've never seen before. Dave Wilson, one thing I did want to throw out, Doug mentioned it, quadruple witching hour.
Right.
What's the impact of that potentially on any kind of trading today, especially as we get near the close?
Well, you're going to get a burst at 4 p.m. Wall Street time, because that's when most of the contracts settle. And as a result of that, I mean, this may be an exceptionally busy end of day. Just looking at stocks that trade on the NYSE and the NASDAQ at this point, we're closing in on 15 billion shares, which is a pretty darn active day on its own. But we may get the busiest day, I presume we will, since this whole decline started. End of February, we're above 19 billion. So that's going to be a number to watch for.
And that's saying something. If we're getting the busiest day, that really is something. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let's head over, if we can, to Bob Moon, who's got your world and national headlines.
Jason, thank you. President Trump, who last week urged governors to meet their state's needs on their own, has now invoked federal powers to order production to help them out. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
The president endorsed the draconian decisions of the governors of New York and California.
I applaud them. They're taking very strong, bold steps, and I applaud them. We want to help, including some of the very important emergency. I would say ventilators, probably more masks. We have millions of masks that we've ordered. They will be here soon. We're having them shipped directly to states.
The president also announced that non-essential travel to Mexico as well as Canada was being banned, and the undocumented turned back, not arrested. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
A short time after Trump spoke, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said today that despite what Trump's administration has said about states being able to have ample access to masks and other health emergency supplies, New Jersey still does not have enough masks to keep health workers safe and also lacks other vital supplies. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says he's signing an executive order today for all workers in non-essential businesses to stay home, and Cuomo says non-essential gatherings of any size must be canceled.
Talk about community and interconnection and interdependence. This is the very realistic embodiment of that. We need everyone to be safe. Otherwise, no one can be safe.
New Jersey's governor is also ordering non-essential businesses closed. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon. Carol, Jason.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
We've got about 13 minutes left in the trading day to wrap up the Friday, but really to wrap up what's been a very volatile week when it comes to the financial markets and equity markets. Back with us is Abe Deshpande. He is founder and chief investment officer at Centerstone Investors. He's joining us on the phone from Connecticut. Abe, so good to have you here with us. A crazy week, and I do want to, both Jason and I want to hear your perspective on the markets. Tell us, though, a little bit about your personal life. You guys okay? The impact that this is having on you.
Oh, hey, Carol. Yeah, I mean, that's very sweet of you to inquire. We're good. I'm really more worried about the city. I mean, 60% of New York City is comprised of people who really can't pay rent if they don't get 1 week's worth of pay. I mean, they're living week by week, and so we've got like a major kind of civil or civic issue that needs to be tended to, and I'm really spending a lot of time thinking about that. But I do appreciate it. Yeah, we're fine. That's bit of a panic everywhere in the Northeast, and increasingly more panic driven, as you know.
Well, it is. Sorry, just to pick up on that, if I can. I mean, it is interesting, Abe, to go with what you're saying for a second. I mean, it is revealing some real sort of cracks in the system in many ways, right? Sort of societally, and we know from talking to you a lot in the past, like you're incredibly thoughtful about that, and you think well beyond the markets and think culturally and societally and things like that. What do you think as we move through this, the outcomes will be?
Well, hopefully a more positive one where people are more, apt to think about their neighbors' concerns and not just their own concerns. The fact that people live day by day or whatever, paycheck to paycheck, is not new. I mean, it's
right.
Fact. I mean, half the country doesn't have any savings, and this has been the case for a long time. What I am hopeful for, and I can see this occurring, is that communities begin to kind of get together to help the least fortunate, and in this case, the less fortunate are those most vulnerable and older folks that need to be cared for.
Yeah, I think that's a really important issue, and I do wonder as we see these programs come out of Washington in particular, that there's going to be hopefully the assistance directed towards individuals like that you're talking about, because those are certainly very much in need. We do want to ask you, Abe, because I was reading through your notes. I mean, you sound like that, you guys are putting some money to work, so you're seeing opportunity at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to sound like a profiteer or anything like that, but we do we have a business to run, and so in a normal environment, we'll have established some sort of intrinsic value for a company, and we'll kind of trade based on where the price is relative to intrinsic value. Right now, there's such a great deal of obviously there's so much uncertainty regarding whether or not certain companies can even survive for more than a few months. I mean, business is shut down, right? So. I think the government, hey, I'm going to tell you, in the beginning, I was really kind of irritated about still the kind of partisanship that was going on just 2 weeks ago. And I, voiced my own concerns with the people that I know in politics. And it didn't take long for them to get their act together and realize that the United States is the main constituency. So I'm kind of impressed. In that case, the fact that we've essentially been ordered to shut down all business means that the government needs to have a massive backstop for business, just so they don't have to lay off all their employees and create that kind of depression era sort of scenario that people are fearing. So, I mean, on the positive side, everything's happening that should happen given the type of bird strike we just had. So. What we're doing from a portfolio perspective is we're, however, focusing more on companies. We had these in our portfolio anyway, but we're focusing even more on them. Businesses where the intrinsic values are more than likely to be stable. So companies like TransCanada, which is a pipeline operator, Target in the United States is going to clearly gain market share. In fact, in the worst case, there are only going to be 3 retailers left: Walmart, Target, and Amazon. So the priority really is focusing on these businesses where we can be certain that balance sheet and business model can withstand literally anything, including this. On the down the line a little bit are companies that have probably very good chance of surviving, whose intrinsic values will be variable, but within a tolerance. But the earnings, are clearly uncertain. Put sort of a target in there. Sunoco, another company we own is called Sunoco, not the gas station company, but it's a materials company, packaging. They have a monopoly on toilet paper rolls, the cardboard inserts. They serve the packaged goods companies that Pringles and things like that you buy in the grocery store. I mean, it's the type of business that's doing probably really well right now, considering their cost of materials. Corrugated paper is going down, and there's a huge amount of demand for their customers' products.
Yeah.
So, and then down the line are the kind of, okay, these stocks are down 80%, but God knows when they're going to recover if. And, as value investors, we're still looking at maybe 20-cent dollars there and going, okay, we'll take some chance there. Now we're basically fully invested. So, I have to caution that I'm almost always early. And in this case, I wouldn't be surprised if we're early. I also have to, admit that I really didn't see this coming at all, and I was very, very, very slow to react to it. Certain times you want your captain to be kind of like slow and steady. Sometimes, that slow and steady is
Yeah.
So, and with that mindset, I've seen it all.
Yeah.
Well, it just made me complacent, right? What I did not see is how quickly this panic would spread and how the reaction of governments would become so extreme to this. So, or maybe, rightly extreme. I don't want to say that it's wrong. So that was at least my mistake. Everyone else, I have no idea, but I clearly could have done a better job.
Well, and we're seeing, headlines continuing to cross. Just want to mention the energy sector just so beaten up. Occidental holding talks with borrowers to address the debt pile that's out there. When we get to the other side of this, Abe, are you anticipating that there's companies out there that, will there be a big wave of consolidation, just companies that are going to have to be bought up, or just companies that will just not make it?
Well, we'll see there's two paths. One is, since it's a government shutdown, the government backstops payrolls, like they just announced in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've been pushing with the government. And I can't even believe I'm advocating some of these things, but it's necessary right now. So in that case, we can just put a quote-unquote pause, which is I guess that's the term du jour. But a real pause requires, literally everyone secure, including employment. If that happens, then it will be a slow but methodical recovery. It will take a while because people aren't just going to go out and hang out with everybody else after this. But that would allow for a methodical recovery. Another one is like a haphazard approach to filling or plugging holes as they pop up, and that could really create a wave of unintended consequences.
All right, we're going to leave it on that. Abe, so sorry. I know we had to drop out there, and we apologize. But great to get your thoughts there. Abe Deshpande, founder and chief investment officer at Centerstone Investors, joining us on the phone from New York City. We've just got about 3.5 minutes left in today's trading day. We'll wrap up those closing numbers, take a look at the week overall, and also highlight some of those movers and shakers on this Friday. This is Bloomberg.
Business is like a puzzle.
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps and BloombergRadio.com.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Stuck inside? Scented candles may be the norm, but the ritualistic nature of incense makes it a better tool for achieving a Zen-like state. So consider recreating a woodsy aroma from scent maker Cinnamon Projects and Furniture Studio Apparatus. In our test, their interlude incense, handmade in Japan and meant to evoke the smell of a violin case, with leathery frankincense, rosin, spruce, and floral iris and tuberose at a burn time of 25 blissful minutes. Another good news for homebound living, movie theaters may be shuttered, but NBC Universal is putting its newest films online in response to coronavirus. For about $20, you can get a 48-hour rental of Trolls World Tour, The Invisible Man, Emma, and The Hunt, among other movies, as soon as March 20th. Cinema owners typically have a 70 to 90-day theatrical window of exclusivity before films go on demand and have fought fiercely.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I'd train to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I'd go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner. I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website. 18 plus UK residents.
It's no fairy tale feeding a family that can't agree. A roast for half of them and a vegan bake for the others. Enter your new hero, the Samsung Dual Cook Flex Oven. It cooks 2 separate dishes at 2 different temperatures in the same oven and even cleans itself with catalytic linings. Plus, you get a 1 in 10 chance of winning £500 when you buy any Samsung Easy Clean oven, so you could live happily ever after. Heroes of the home at Curry's PC World. Terms and register at currys500.co.uk.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
That it is. Closing bell for this Friday, March 20th. The equity market looks as though it's going to close very near session lows. Very, very heavy trading today given the simultaneous expiration of options and futures contracts. So we're getting a lot of orders, sell orders likely on the close, and it's going to take a few moments to get accurate settlement here. At last check, more than 16.4 billion shares traded hands in U.S. equity markets. Dow down on the day by more than 4.6%. S&P 500 drops more than 4.3%, and the NASDAQ comp weaker by about 3.8% today. The day began on a positive when the Fed announced a coordinated action with some of the other key central banks for dollar liquidity swap lines as a way of moving ample supplies of the world. The Bloomberg dollar spot index today was just 1/10%, and we produced a here at 111.10, and a euro down about 0.2%. The S&P 500 dropping 50%. To the yield of 88 basis points today. we had President Trump invoking, or said that saying that he had invoked the Defense Production Act, and he has directed certain companies to produce medical supplies and healthcare equipment to address the shortages that we're hearing about at hospitals across the country. Senate Majority Leader McConnell saying he wants to pass a massive stimulus program by Monday. This legislation is expected to top $1 trillion. However, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin called the bill too small. The Fed also expanded its money market operations to include some municipal debt, so member banks can use short-term muni paper as collateral to get short-term funding from the Fed. Big move lower for the price of crude oil. Russia saying it's raised output. WTI down more than 11%, settling at $22.43. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Oh, come on, Tim. Shake him. Not stir.
Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, everyone. Time to take a look at some of the stocks on the move here, crunching some of the numbers just to give you some of the big picture for the week overall. Dow Jones Industrial Average, Doug was giving you the closing numbers for today, but for the week overall, Dow Jones Industrial Average down 17.3% this week, S&P 500 down 15%, and the NASDAQ down 12.6%. In the meantime, I was crunching some of the numbers for the year overall. So here's where we are in 2020. Dow is down 33%, the S&P 500 is down 29%, and the NASDAQ is down 23%, and it is only March 20th. But I have to say, Jason, to be fair, I don't disagree with some of those folks that once we get on the other side of this, that, you know, we will see a bounce back in a lot of the equity markets and a lot of this. But, you know, the problem is we just don't have visibility on that yet.
We certainly don't. And, you know, one of the names that I feel like is an emblem of some of that is your number one gainer in the S&P, and that is Carnival. Yeah. You know, the cruise line, obviously it has been battered, to say the least. That business, it feels like, is just the tip of the spear when it comes to how this is playing out through the global economy, especially given cruise ships were so in the headlines as this developed globally, especially over in Asia. You know, all the pictures and the words about that ship off the coast initially of Japan and then another ship off the coast of San Francisco, and, you know, trying to understand how that all fits into the picture. But, you know, some investors saying, well, you know, we're optimistic for the future. We heard that from, not about that particular name, we heard that general theme from Abhay Deshpande just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I've been talking to the folks at Carnival. You know, what's interesting, too, is, and I think as we see some of the programs and the various executives that have gone to Washington, I think there are high expectations that there will be some assistance for the likes of Carnival and others. So, you know, stay tuned. As you said, though, number one gainer in the S&P 500 up 20%. But, you know, I think a lot of that has to do about expectations in terms of what we might get from the government. Some of the other names that certainly play in the travel, leisure, hospitality space, MGM, that stock, your number two gainer in the S&P 500, that is up 18.3%. And then one of the airlines, United Airlines, that name was up 15% in today's session. Big picture, we were still lower. 420 names in the S&P were down today. 83 actually showed some gains, 2 unchanged. But again, a lot of those that play in that space, the travel, the leisure, the hospitality space. And I think what's going to be interesting is we're all going to be busy over the weekend watching the headlines because policymakers, the government, are working on getting some specifics when it comes to these programs.
You know, one interesting name I wanted to mention, and it was a stock that was down pretty significantly, is Pepsi. I was down 11.4%, call it 11%. But interestingly, late in the session, they did announce hiring 6,000 new full-time employees across the United States. We saw Walmart saying they were going to hire. That, of course, follows Amazon saying they were going to hire. It'll be interesting to see over the coming weeks and months what the employment picture looks like in many ways, because it is uncertain, to say the least. I mean, we're going to get jobless claims over the next, 2 weeks from today? Is that right? It's not next week.
No, every week. So jobless claims come every week.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The monthly jobs report. But,
yeah.
and this is what we've heard from our economics team, that those weekly jobless claims numbers, because they're real time, right?
Yeah.
They're not lagging like the monthly jobs report. So these are going to be important reads. We already saw them tick higher in the most recent read. So these are going to become even more important going forward in terms of telling us, because some are hiring, a lot of folks, of course, a lot of companies are letting go some of their workers, or at least on, at least temporary leaves, we hope. Let's talk about the volatility index report, down 7.
Index to see what are the biggest moves and what's the story behind them, because a lot of times with these smaller company shares, they just go up and down based on supply and demand and nothing else. When there's a story to be told, that's when stock of the day comes in.
All right, you bet. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. You've been really a trooper, and thanks for all your help this week. Dave Wilson, our Bloomberg Stocks columnist, joining us in our interactive broker studio. Stay safe, Dave. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. Back over to Bob Moon.
Carol, Jason, thank you. It was a noticeably testy President Trump who led today's coronavirus briefing at the White House, berating and ridiculing a reporter who simply asked what Trump's message was for those Americans afraid of what's happening. Trump began by staring down the questioner, telling him, "You're a terrible reporter." He went on to accuse him of engaging in sensationalism, and eventually he offered Americans some solace.
My message to the American people is that there is a very low incidence of death. You understand that. And we're going to come through this stronger than ever before. If you get it, if you happen to get it, it is highly unlikely. It's looking like it's getting to a number that's much smaller than people originally thought in terms of the ultimate problem, which would be death.
It is, for the president, a matter of these odds. Globally, the virus has now infected more than 246,000 people and killed more than 10,000 around the world. Trump and other administration officials again claimed supplies are flowing and that enough medical masks are now available that states just need to ask. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, just a short time later, disputed that. He said his state does not have ample access to masks and other health emergency supplies.
We continue to have outstanding needs in personal protective equipment. We put a big ask in. We've gotten a fraction of that.
And at the same time, Vice President Mike Pence said that the federal government has found a new source for ventilators, and that they should be able to retrofit and convert old ventilators. Global News.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now, there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood.
deliberately. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I'd train to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I'd go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown, today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
In the left passenger seat, we've got Dan the Widowmaker. In the right, Face Smash Steve. Oh, a solid left hook from Steve. Blocked by Dan. Dan's got him up against the ropes. Going for a signature pile driver slam. But Steve's wriggled away like a greasy snake. And Steve's got him in a chokehold. He's got him! He's got him!
Boys, pack it in back there. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
Dad wanted to get Mum a beauty treatment for Mother's Day. The kids wanted to do something homemade. So they compromised. And now Mummy's got no eyebrows. Don't compromise. With Asda's Isabella Bouquet flowers for just £5, you won't have to. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to, like, the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But, like, for an unbelievably good price? Yeah? Yeah. And I want it where I could choose the length for my own contract. Yeah!
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost. Direct only. Device plan of 3 to 36 months. Refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited. Terms apply.
It's a battle. The quest to satisfy hungry tums. Rise to the challenge. With a Bosch pyrolytic oven, roast chicken, mac and cheese, the family will be bombarded with fabulous food. So will your oven walls. But Bosch, your knight in shining armour, will leave them gleaming, safely turning grease to dust you just wipe away. While you get a 1 in 10 chance of winning £500 when you buy any Bosch Easy Clean oven. Heroes of the home at Curry's PC World. Terms and register at curryswin500.co.uk.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Boy, the equity market slid again today and finished at the worst level of the session. Volume greater than 18.4 billion shares. We were very heavy in trading due to the expiration of options and futures contracts. Now, the day, interestingly, began on an up note when the Fed announced a coordinated action to beef up dollar liquidity, but we kind of wobbled when New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, sorry about that, was going to reference his dad there, ordered all workers for non-essential businesses to stay at home for the foreseeable future. President Trump also saying he's invoked the Defense Production Act and directed certain companies to begin producing medical supplies and health care equipment. So the Dow tumbles more than 4.3% to the lowest level in 3 years. You know, over the course of the week, the S&P is down 15%. So far this year, the S&P down nearly 29%. So the S&P down 4.3%. The Dow off about 4.5% today. NASDAQ comp weaker by 3.8%. Crude oil tumbles 11%. Reports are indicating that Russia has ramped up output. We settled New York trading at 22.43. Interestingly, the energy stocks actually pushed higher today. 10-year Treasury down 27 basis points in yield. We were last quoted in New York at 86 basis points. You're caught up on markets. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, the airlines, that is certainly a sector we've been talking a whole lot about. So many people rely on them for transportation. They're huge employers as well, and maybe they're going to get bailed out by the government. We'll see. Helene Becker joins us, Managing Director, Senior Research Analyst for Cowen Research Group, joining us on the phone from New York City. She follows that industry quite closely. Helene, great to have you with Carol and myself.
Well, thanks again for having me. Thanks
first
for
of all,
having me again.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. First, I trust all is well with you. I mean, how is work going at this point? Because I have to think following companies, especially in this sector, it's got to be difficult not being able to employ, I would imagine, the typical models.
Well, yes. So I have to say two things. One, a shout out to our Cowen IT team, because they've really kept the whole firm going. Most everybody is working remotely, and I feel like our teams are doing a really great job, and they're making my job easy to do. What's hard to do, of course, to your point, is figure out what these airline companies are going to earn this year. We adjusted our numbers, and we were 30% below consensus. And then the next day, we were wrong. As the government put in the travel ban to Europe, we didn't take that into account. So we adjusted again, and then they added the UK and Ireland, and we adjusted again. And then, of course, all the airlines are just being really aggressive, and so they're doing two things. One, they're cutting capacity really rapidly. I think in the past, we wouldn't have seen such rapid cuts. But the other thing they're trying to do is not terminate employment, right? They're trying to encourage early retirements. They're trying to, they're offering early out programs. They're offering leaves, with health benefits maintained and so on. But, when you're flying 60% of what you were intending to fly, or in Delta's case, you were intending to fly almost 1,000 aircraft, and you're going to fly 400 aircraft, and you figure it's about 98 employees per plane across the industry. It varies a little, depending on the size of the airline. But, if the airlines were to size their work staff based on the number of aircraft they're actually going to fly in April and May, they would be furloughing most of their people. I mean, Delta has a workforce of almost 15,000 pilots, and they've grounded 600 aircraft, and on average, it's about 14 pilots per plane. So you're talking about 8,500 people, and they're trying so hard not to do that. All of management has taken pay cuts. The CEOs have taken pay cuts anywhere from 10% to 100%, and they're doing everything they can to maintain employment because they want to lead the recovery as well they should. And because, without a vibrant airline industry, we cannot have a vibrant economy.
Well, that's a really good point. I got to say, when I knew you were going to come on and our producer Paul Brennan mentioned it, I was so excited because you so know this industry. And Helene, you've seen it go through some really tough cycles before, and you've seen a lot of consolidation in this industry. So having said that, we see all the industry groups, in Washington talking with the president and his team. What do we need to do to help shore it up? That's fair, because I think there's the other side of the argument where, folks are saying, well, wait a minute, they got tax breaks thanks to the, the overhaul that the president did, when he kicked off his administration. And yet, airlines didn't necessarily create the safety nets that maybe they needed financially, that banks are now required to do coming out of the financial crisis. So what's the fair and balanced thing to do here?
Right. So that's a fair question. And, I think the way to think about it is the airlines went into this year, well, probably with balance sheets. You might point out to one or two exceptions, but for the most part, the balance sheets were in the best shape they'd ever been in. And I feel like they learned their lessons, right, after September 11th, when traffic fell off 40% in September and I think it was down we've said 21% in October, and then 14, 15% in November and December of 01, and then it took about a year, 15 months for traffic to come back. And they did work very tirelessly. They all went through bankruptcy. They shed lots of high-cost debt. They cut people's pay. They did everything they needed to do to set themselves up over the next decade for growth.
Yeah.
Then we had this amazing decade, right, from 2010 to 2019 of growth. All pay has been restored. I think we mentioned in a note this morning that Delta employees received 75% pay increases over the last decade.
Right. Hey, Helene, I just want, if you don't mind,
you have to go.
I just want to break in with you. We've only got about 30 seconds left, but Delta just literally came out and said they're suspending their dividend and their stock repurchase program. Are we going to see more of that, you think, across the industry? Just got about 20 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I'll make it short. Yeah, we will.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, a fast-breaking story. We're glad you were here with us to give us some instant context there. Helene Becker, following the airline industry so closely, Managing Director and Senior Research Analyst for Cowen Research Group, joining us on the phone from New York City. As Carol said, just right in the middle of one of the most important and closely watched sectors in this crisis. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks ended lower, closing out a second consecutive losing week as government stepped up efforts to keep people at home. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled 913, falling back below 20,000. The S&P 500 dropped 105. The Nasdaq Composite tumbled 271. United Airlines says it will begin laying off workers in under 2 weeks unless Congress passes a financial aid package for the industry. United has cut its April schedule by 60% and sees even bigger cuts in May. Netflix is stepping up to support Hollywood laborers put out of work by the coronavirus pandemic. It will spend $85 million to help people working on its productions and will give $15 million more to third parties. J.Crew reportedly is suspending the spin-off of its Madewell brand, a move that had been seen as crucial to easing its debt load. Sources say J.Crew could reverse its decision if market conditions improve. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience, an ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Dad wanted to get Mum a beauty treatment for Mother's Day. The kids wanted to do something homemade, so they compromised. And now Mummy's got no eyebrows. Don't compromise. With a Cadbury milk tray, just £2.50, you won't have to. Asda. Selected stores subject to availability, 360 grams.
Imagine winning 10 grand.
Yes!
With Set for Life, you could win 10 grand every month for 30 years.
Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Play Monday, and you could make every month amazing with Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to, like, the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But, like, for an unbelievably good price. Yeah? And I want it where I could choose the length for my own contract. Yeah!
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost, direct only device plan of 3 to 36 months. Refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited. Terms apply.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
Anyone can help beat cancer. Will you? Sign up to Race for Life now, in partnership with Tesco.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
We make learning from the best possible every week.
That's not typical for a CEO, is it?
Barry Ritholtz hosts Masters in Business.
That's not an evolution?
Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, a remote edition, as we're constantly reminded. And coming up, Carol Masser, we're going to hear about the restaurant industry, critical, a nice pairing with what we just heard about the airline business.
Yeah, exactly. And someone who was meeting at the White House earlier in the week with the president and his team. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to your top headlines and a look again at some of those closing numbers. Here is Doug Krisner.
Oh, I get the great job having to tell you how bad it was today, right? The equity market finishing at the low of the day, the worst week for stocks since the financial crisis. Today, the S&P 500 fell 4.3%. Over the course of the last 5 trading days, we were down 15%, and so far this year, the S&P is down nearly 29%. That would essentially take away everything that we gained for all of 2019. If you're wondering about the Dow, it was weaker by 4.5%. NASDAQ comp comes in about 3.8%, and volume today was robust, very heavy given the expiration of options and futures, more than 18.5 billion shares traded. Oddly enough, we began on an up note today when the Fed announced a coordinated action to keep dollar liquidity ample around the world. The Fed also expanded its money market operations to include some municipal debt. But then midday things began to wobble a bit when New York Governor Cuomo ordered all workers for non-essential businesses to stay home. And then the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, said that his state will tighten the screws on social distancing. Crude oil tumbles 11% in the New York session on reports Russia has raised output. We settled 22.43 in WTI. 10-year Treasury last quoted at a yield of 83 basis points. That's a quick look at markets. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, much appreciated, Doug Krisner. Well, we did just talk about airlines, another industry that's really having a hard time as a result of the shutdown because of the virus is the hotel and hospitality industry. And we did see leading hotel CEOs meeting up at the White House and President Trump. That happened on Tuesday of this week. And that included our next guest. Let's bring in Chip Rogers. He's CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. He's joining us on the phone from D.C. Chip, thank you so much for finding time for Jason and myself. Tell us a little bit about that meeting. What was going on? We saw the press conference, but tell us a little bit about the conversation behind the scenes.
Well, it's always interesting with the president, but he's fully aware of what is happening. And what we were really trying to inform him about was kind of the depth of the problem. We know that airlines are hurting. We know that hotels are hurting, but just how bad. So as we mentioned to the president, and I've mentioned in probably 100 interviews since, if you take the impact of 9/11 and then take the impact of the financial crisis, if you were to add those two together and then double it, that would be about as bad as it is right now. We are seeing occupancy, across the country really fall to almost zero in some places. We've never seen anything this bad.
Well, and Chip, it was interesting, listening to some very familiar names to us, folks who have been on our air, including Chris Nassetta over at Hilton, talking about those occupancy rates and also talking about just shutting down hotels in major cities. What's the even mid to, not to say the least, longer term impact of this, these sorts of unprecedented shutdowns?
Yeah, I think Chris put it well. And keep in mind, Hilton just got voted the best place in the U.S. to work, right? I think the second year in a row. This is a guy that really cares about his employees. Same thing with Marriott and most of our hotel chains. They really care about their employees. This is the last thing they want to do. And Chris mentioned it. Hilton Hotels has been around 100 years and has never had to shut down a hotel. They're about to shut down over half of them. That is exactly what is happening because you can't operate a business if you have no customers. Right. And right now, there are no business meetings. There's no business travel. There's very little leisure travel, except in a couple of spots in Florida. Everything has come to a shutdown, and consequently, the hotels are shutting down.
I have to say, Arnie Sorensen did a video. If you haven't seen it, I put it out on my Twitter feed. And you can tell that this has not been easy to shut down their properties around the globe. And what I do wonder, too, Chip, is, what kind of safety nets are there for any of these workers?
Well, Probably very little. I mean, in the hospitality industry, most of the jobs are starting jobs for people. This is where they begin their career. So consequently, you have a good portion, over half of the workers in the industry work on an hourly basis. And so, yeah, there's not a lot of safety net there. And that's what we've been talking to members of Congress about. I think I've spoken to every single person in leadership within the last 72 hours from the president on down. And we've mentioned to them what we're asking for is support for the employees. This is not to go and keep the corporations alive. This is to help the employees maintain their livelihood. I mean, even if it's at a reduced number, we've got to help keep them afloat. Right. We hopefully will keep them in jobs so that when the economy comes back, they'll be ready to go back to work. But we can't just ignore the fact that millions of people almost overnight are losing their entire paycheck.
I have to push back a little bit because this is a conversation we're hearing as we go through this process. I understand, individuals are, pushed to have their own personal safety nets. I mean, what's the responsibility of the industry? And I feel this way, too, from some of the bigger restaurant players as well. What's the responsibility, of the individual companies to provide that safety net for their workers? I mean, Marriott is a highly profitable company, 21 billion in revenues for the most recent year. And I'm not picking on them. It's just one screen that's up in front of me at the moment. But What's the responsibility of companies themselves to provide something in this time of need for their workers or on a longer term basis?
Well, keep in mind that they're doing that in many ways. By furloughing workers as opposed to terminating their employment, they're allowing the workers to stay on with most of the benefits, including health care. And for some period of time, they'll be able to do that. And keep in mind, in most places, your employer is paying a good 2/3 to 3/4 of the health care cost. And that's great for the workers. But our industry, which, as you know, is dramatically different from airlines and cruise ships, there are not 3 or 4 major companies in hotels. There are tens of thousands of owners, because for every Marriott hotel or Hilton hotel that you see the sign at the top of the building, there's a 90%, 90% chance that's a small business owner who owns that, somebody that lives in that community. And yeah, they have some resources to help folks out, and they're doing it. We're hearing amazing stories. But you got to keep in mind their one fixed cost is servicing their debt. They all have some debt on those properties, and if they don't pay their mortgage, then they're going to lose the business altogether, and there won't be a job for that person to come back to.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. Chip Rogers, thank you so much. CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. We will be checking back in with you, I am sure, because as this story goes on, as this industry goes on, it is at the core of so much of what we do in terms of travel, both business and leisure. And as that does, at some point, start to come back, Carol, it'll be a different industry in many ways. And it is one where, you could hear what he said. I mean, he has been pounding the pavement there on Capitol Hill and at the administration. They're meeting with the president. So more to come here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get a check on world and national news headlines. For that, we're going to check in once again with Bob Moon in our 1130 newsroom. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Jason, President Trump is pledging to pour on more fiscal aid until the economy recovers, as he puts it, until we get this going. The Trump administration is said to see the proposed Senate Republican stimulus measure as in some areas and wants it to include direct payments to more individuals. The president said he's aiming to pay for keeping Americans home from work.
We're working out a tremendous financial package for them so they don't work. Who ever heard of this? Usually you work out a financial package to get people working. We're asking people not to work.
Trump told reporters his administration is talking about much more than a $1,000 check for each American. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that the border with Mexico, as well as Canada, would be closed to non-essential travel. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports there was also word of caution about not believing everything you hear or read.
Joining the White House coronavirus briefing, Pompeo cautioned Americans not to fall for internet disinformation, whether planted by foreign powers or by fellow Americans.
Information that at one time suggested somehow this virus emanated from the United States Army, this information about lockdowns that are taking place. Every American, indeed people all around the world, should ensure that where they turn to for information is a reliable source and not a bad actor trying to create and flow information that they know is wrong.
Pompeo reiterated his call for Americans not to travel overseas or to prepare for a long stay abroad if they're outside the United States. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food store and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner. I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website. 18 plus UK residents.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
Anyone can help beat cancer.
Will you? Sign up to Race for Life now, in partnership with Tesco.
Make life easy with Sky TV and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q. Discover Sky originals like Intelligence.
I think we can learn a lot from each other.
Right next to Netflix originals like You.
It's nice to meet you, love.
Find them all side by side on Sky Q. So, get Sky Ultimate TV for just £25 a month. Easy. Visit sky.com and join today. Ends April 30th. Prices may change. 18-month minimum term on Sky Signature. Set up £20 requires Sky Q connected to broadband. Correct at March 13th. Terms apply.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So the equity market ended lower. We dropped to session lows right at the closing bell. It was the worst week for U.S. stocks since the global financial crisis. If you look at the price action in the S&P for the week, we're down 15%. Kind of another day of those dreadful headlines regarding the virus and the death toll, more business closures, several states taking dramatic action to limit the movement of people. So you have the S&P on a daily basis down 4.3%. And you remember that record high of February 19th? We're 32% below that level. Volume today, very heavy. We had the expiration of options and futures. More than 18.5 billion shares traded. By the way, the Dow was down 4.5%. NASDAQ comp today traded off by about 3.8%. Crude oil gets shellacked. New York crude down 11%. We settled 22.43 on indications that Russia has raised output. The auto industry is asking for help from the U.S. government, and Walmart is doling out $545 million in early and special bonuses for workers who are operating in overdrive to keep those shelves stocked. Walmart today down 4.5%. 10-year Treasury last quoted in New York at a yield of 86 basis points. Let's get you back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, telehealth is really become a term that more and more of us are familiar with, especially as we are almost all remote, trying to figure this out and trying to figure out how to get diagnosed, especially in an age of few tests, especially around the coronavirus. Zach Reitano joins us. He is the co-founder and the CEO of Ro. It's a company familiar probably to many of you through Get Roman and some of its other interesting initiatives. Zach, great to have you with Carol and myself.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so you are right in the middle of this, part of the task force that is trying to understand how to tackle this massive problem of testing and from the perspective of using technology. Tell us what you're doing.
Absolutely. So Ro built a free coronavirus telehealth assessment to help assess an individual patient's risk of COVID-19. So what happens is a patient comes onto our website, they'll enter in their medical history, their symptoms, their travel history, any medications that they're on. For example, if they're on immunosuppressants, then they might be at increased risk. And while that's happening, our platform is actually analyzing that structured information in real time and then placing the patients in different risk buckets and then showing that information to a provider, so a physician or a nurse practitioner. And then the provider will review that information and follow up with the patient either via message, phone, or video and recommend the best next steps. And those best next steps might range from self-quarantine all the way to Ro helping coordinate in-person transportation to a healthcare facility. And that assessment is live in all 50 states for free, including D.C.
Who are the practitioners, though, who are making the assessment?
Absolutely. So the assessment, the practitioners on the platform are all board-certified physicians, and they're going to be licensed in the state in which the patient is located, either nurse practitioners or providers that have a background in family medicine, internists, hospitalists, so general physicians.
How do you screen for them?
So they go through a rigorous onboarding process, so they'll have background checks. We'll scan for medical malpractice. They'll also be put in what is called a sandbox environment, where they will be able to treat example patients and go through and make sure that they are practicing corresponding to either, in this instance, CDC protocols or WHO protocols. And then we also are making sure that we can audit each patient's chart and make sure that every physician is practicing according to the protocols.
So, Zach, tell us about the process of building this, because obviously you set out to do telehealth, and we could talk a little bit about that, but how do you sort of shift resources? How do you sort of build something like this?
So it's a great question. Frankly, a lot of this did not require our team to build too much new technology. The amazing thing is that we were able to leverage our platform's infrastructure, which has facilitated over 4 million patient-physician interactions in the last 2 years. And so what we had to do is we had to use that technology that's basically built to take in structured patient information, analyze those responses in real time, and present it to a doctor. And so when we saw that the country would benefit from a scaled national triage service, taking into account the CDC's and WHO's very rigorous protocols, we thought that our platform could lend a hand in this time of need. And more importantly, when you talked about the benefit of telemedicine, we think there's 3 big benefits here that telemedicine can provide. The first is that it unburdens the existing healthcare system, right? So anyone who doesn't need to visit an in-person healthcare facility, if they can be treated remotely, it leaves room for the facility to have the capacity to treat the patients that need it most. Right. The second is that it just reduces the spread. The fewer number of people that have to interact with one another at a healthcare facility, the better. And the third is that it can educate patients. Right. So everyone right now, to your point, is worried about this. There's potential for panic. And if someone can very quickly get in touch with a healthcare provider and understand their risk and the things that they can do to protect themselves and their family, you can put them at ease through a lot of education.
So it sounds like a lot of pluses, but nothing's ever perfect. What are the concerns, though, with telemedicine and telehealth?
You're completely right that nothing is ever perfect. I think what we view telemedicine as a complement to the in-person healthcare system. I think what we're seeing right now is the in-person healthcare system is overwhelmed, right? So many people are flooding it, and that makes sense, right? We don't have the infrastructure that is set up to handle an international pandemic. Right? And we don't have that bandwidth. And so the way that we view telemedicine is a complement to the existing system that basically has this idea that if it can be done via telemedicine, it should be done via telemedicine so that when you need in-person care, right now the average in-person doctor's visit lasts about 12 minutes. It takes 29.3 days to make. So if we can unburden the existing system, then the next time you're able to go, instead of getting 12 minutes, maybe you get 30. But even in this specific pandemic, right, a lot of patients are waiting hours and hours to see someone in person. Imagine all of the people who were extremely low risk, healthy, on a different end of the spectrum. If they weren't even at that in-person facility in the first place, then the high-risk patients get seen faster, they get tested more quickly, they get those results more quickly.
So, Zach, how much of this, and obviously this is hard to predict, but how much of this will sort of fundamentally change as we go forward? We get through this crisis. Do you foresee a world, and what's the right percentage of people who sort of use telehealth to, as either a first step or as some sort of complement to a more traditional going to see a doctor situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, look, if you're asking me candidly, I do think that this has pulled forward telemedicine as an industry, but I think it's really for unfortunate circumstances. I would have loved for it to happen for other reasons, right? But I think people are seeing the opportunity and actually how comparable in certain situations remote care can be. And I think what we've seen wonderful actions and frankly, very quick actions from the government in terms of their loosening licensing regulations, right? So normally, a physician always has to be licensed in the state in which the patient is located. Right. We have states like,
Zach, we apologize, but we've got to kind of break in. We're coming up on a hard break, so we'll have you back more to hear about how this all works out.
Really interesting.
Zach Reitano, he's co-founder, chief executive officer of Roe, on the phone from Connecticut. A quick headline: PG&E bankruptcy plan that won support from California's governor. So, Jason, as you reminded us, things are still going on, whether it's
amid
activist
all of this,
investors
especially
or
happening in California. It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. The world does still continue to kind of move on with some of these major issues.
All right, so for those of you who are listening in New York and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week, we will continue. Stay tuned. We got a big interview coming up with the former chairman of Lehman Brothers. If you're listening on Bloomberg 99.1 in D.C., Sound On with Kevin Cirilli is coming up next. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Sunday night at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. Businesses may soon be on their honor when it comes to rules against polluting the planet. Former federal officials worry that coronavirus restrictions could bite into environmental enforcement. The Environmental Protection Agency stresses that it's continuing its mission of protecting the public from threats to human health and the environment. But Cynthia Giles, who headed enforcement at the EPA under President Barack Obama, is concerned that nationwide restrictions could cut into the number of inspectors venturing into the field. The EPA's inspection rate was already trending down before the coronavirus struck to the lowest level in at least a decade last year. Christine Todd Whitman, who led the EPA under George W. Bush, suggests the agency could ignore things now and, as she puts it, have a pretty good claim as to why. Former government lawyer Mark Ryan is hopeful big operators will continue to be honest out of fear of the PR backlash of getting caught. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to, like, the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But, like, for an unbelievably good price. Yeah. And I want it where I could choose the length for my own contract. Yeah.
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost, direct only, device plan of 3 to 36 months, refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited, terms apply.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
Anyone can help beat cancer. Will you? Sign up to Race for Life now, in partnership with Tesco.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner. 5 p.m. on Wall Street, so we have capped the worst week for the equity market since the global financial crisis. Today, the Dow was down to about 4.3%. We're at an index level now of 2,304. You got to go back to February 2017 to reach a similar level. And if you want to take a step back, for the week, the S&P was down 15%. Today, we actually began on an up note when the Fed announced coordinated action to keep dollar liquidity ample around the world, and the Fed also took steps to expand its money market operation to include some municipal debt. But we began to wobble kind of midday when Governor Cuomo was one of the first governors, kind of following on the heels of California Governor Newsom. Cuomo ordered all workers for non-essential businesses to stay at home for the foreseeable future. So we had crude oil today tumbling by 11%. The report here is that Russia has raised output. It may be a sign of a deeper commitment to the price war with Saudi Arabia. We also had indications that the oil regulator in Texas has been invited to address OPEC at the June meeting. New York crude down more than 11%. We settled at 22.43. The Dow today weaker by 4.5%. NASDAQ comp down 3.8%. 10-year Treasury down 29 basis points in yield. We were last quoted in New York at around 84 basis points. That's a quick look at markets. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right. So, Carol Masser, I have to say, this is a conversation that I have really been looking forward to. A friend of ours, I dare say, coming back to join us. We had a fantastic conversation with him earlier in the year, and just the sort of person that we need at a time like this to give us some perspective. His name is Michael Ainsley. You may know his name. He's the former chairman of Lehman Brothers, also the former chairman, president, CEO of Sotheby's. He's a philanthropist, just a guy who knows a lot about the world and markets. He joins us on the phone from Florida. Michael, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks, Jason and Carol. It's great to be back with you. Thank you.
All right. Well, let me start by asking you, you're well. Tell us about sort of what's going on around you down in Florida.
Well, our community down here is hunkering down, and we're getting the word out that people really don't realize how serious this is. People aren't listening to their local officials well enough. People really need to get in their homes and the social distance. There's still too much interaction going on, and it's spreading very, very rapidly. The reports are just not accurate on what the reported cases are, as we all know. But we're healthy. We're doing well. My wife and our daughter's in Nashville. She's been exposed to it. Vanderbilt seems to be a bit of a hot spot, so we're worrying about her, but we're fine.
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting because we were watching just even today, Michael. First we heard from the governor of Massachusetts and the governor of New Jersey, and then we heard from the district, Washington, D.C. And it does seem that as the cases pick up, whether there's more testing, that we're seeing increasingly a hunkering down of cities and really states overall. You know, the president, I think, was asked earlier this morning in the update on the virus whether or not there should be a national lockdown. His point was not everybody has it as severe as maybe California or New York. Do you think that we're at a point where we need to see some kind of national lockdown or not yet?
I'm not quite sure of a national lockdown, but there certainly need to be stronger regional lockdowns. We have a lockdown in Palm Beach, but West Palm Beach is still having parties on the beach and in the hotels. So they're as close to us as you are, next door to people in New York. So it's not working if communities in a region don't act in concert.
Well, and Michael, you understand human beings very well. Is this just people kind of willfully ignorant about this, or what's happening? I mean, I feel like, so many people in New York that I'm guessing you are getting firsthand reports of what it's like here. I mean, I'm hunkered down in Westchester. Carol's in Jersey City. Our company's building is effectively closed as of this weekend, as is every business in the state of New York. So I do wonder, why someone wouldn't see that, especially a well-educated person, and say, all right, I got to change my behavior.
I think the leadership has not been strong and consistent on this. I think the media has tried to educate people, but people just aren't yet fully listening enough, and they're not frightened. Frankly, they're not frightened enough, and they need to be, because this is very serious. This is not going to go away quickly.
Well,
all right. Well, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, because you said, not acting in concert. And I do think that that's been something that we've been covering a lot in Business Week magazine about the need for a coordinated effort right now, whether it pertains to the global economy, global markets, and most importantly, the global health situation. There's been so many increased tensions around the world, Michael. How do you look at that from, kind of the relationships or lack thereof that are going on around this globe right now?
Well, I heard the governor of New York saying, well, it wouldn't help to lock down New York if the surrounding states don't do the same thing. I think there has to be cooperation, and much more so than there has been. I mean, we've been warned by Italy and China and Korea of what needed to be done, and we haven't listened. So I'm a little pessimistic right now.
Yeah. So, Michael, I know you watch the markets closely, and we're wrapping up a week here, unlike many we've seen in a long time, certainly, maybe ever, and time will tell. What do you make of what the market did this week? And there certainly was some fear there. It feels like. How do you read it?
Well, I look back to 2008 when I was a director at Lehman Brothers, and this crisis is so much worse. I think that the policymakers learned something from 2008. I don't think they anticipated how badly and how quickly the fallout, the crisis in 2008 would develop. There it was not the enemy was not a disease. It was a big bank without a lot of friends. This time it's much easier, I think, politically to get consensus. And fortunately, we've got a government that is seemingly working in coordination. I just hope they move very, very quickly. The loss of jobs and the loss of income that is experienced all over this country is staggering. Literally, I heard a restaurateur yesterday who had 4,200 employees last week. Today he has 6.
Wow. Right.
And then I hear someone on television saying we shouldn't make government loans to any company that lays off any employees. That is really being said by someone who's never run a business. You can't keep 4,200 employees when you have zero revenue.
Right. Right. And so let's talk about that. And we're going to talk about this a lot more. We're going to keep you with us. Just briefly, the bailouts that we're talking about so far, and I use that term, intentionally. Are we thinking about it in the right sense? Just got about a minute, and then we'll bring you back.
You want me to?
Yeah, just bailouts, real quick.
I think the bailout is the wrong term. Nobody did anything wrong here. This is a pandemic that really came upon
intentionally
so rapidly, and the industries that have been wiped out. The air travel, cruise ships, movies, restaurants, the music and entertainment business. I have a family member who runs a company with bands all over the country. That was last month. Now they're all unemployed.
Yeah.
So we have to take concerted government action and provide bridge financing. I think we've got to provide much more unemployment insurance because literally millions are going to be unemployed that were employed gainfully very recently. Sending out checks is good, but it's not adequate because this could go on for several months.
All right, Michael Ainsley, hang with us. We got so much more to talk to you about. Really excited you're with us. Michael Ainsley, former chairman of Lehman Brothers, former chairman CEO of Sotheby's as well. A lot of great perspective. We'll bring you more of that in a minute. First, let's get back to Bob Moon, who's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason Carroll, as coronavirus sweeps through the country disrupting our lives, a disturbing discovery about the most vulnerable. It was revealed at the daily White House briefing by Coronavirus Task Force Coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx.
From Italy, we're seeing another concerning trend that the mortality in males seems to be twice in every age group of females.
New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said today that despite what the federal government has said about states now having ample access to masks and other health emergency supplies, his state does not.
We continue to have outstanding needs in personal protective equipment. We put a big ask in. We've gotten a fraction of that.
That contradicts statements from the president just a short time earlier that states have access to what they need. At that same briefing, Vice President Mike Pence said the administration has suddenly discovered more ventilators.
In our recent discussion with anesthesiologists, we've literally identified tens of thousands of existing ventilators that can be retrofitted and converted.
President Trump was notably testy as he led today's briefing, at one point berating a reporter who simply asked what Trump's message would be for Americans afraid of what's happening.
What do you say the Americans were scared, though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
The And president went on to chide the questioner for bad reporting and sensationalism. He eventually said Americans should know not as many are dying as had been feared. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Bob, thank you so much. You were listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, Jason Kelly. Well, Carol, you just sent me this story. I had seen it go across the Bloomberg a few minutes ago.
It's the most read on the Bloomberg right now.
So, yeah. Let's talk about it. Goldman CEO, 20% pay bump. Good for David Solomon.
David Solomon, $27.5 million in compensation for 2019. It is his first full year on the job. It includes $2 million in salary, a $7.65 million cash bonus, and $17.85 million long-term incentive. The bank, of course, putting this out in an official filing. And this is coming, the bank is going through a lot of changes right now, and we know that. They've got a $1.3 billion cost-cutting plan. They've removed some managers, continuing to do so. They're shifting employees around, moving them to less expensive locales. So, this is what's going on. And, he's got some goals that he has set out. He laid that out in that first investor day ever that Goldman held back in January. We'll see in terms. I feel like the goals for all companies. I think about the magazine last year, and Joel Weber and his team at Business Week were spot on in that 2020 in many ways will be a lost year because companies are just, we just don't know when there's an end to this virus, and we don't know what ultimately the cost will be. Do I think markets will bounce back? Do I think the economy will bounce back? Absolutely. But, it may take some time and longer than we all anticipate.
Well, and we are in a very political season. We are also in a crisis at this moment,
Absolutely.
A global health crisis. And you do wonder just optically, what people, how people are going to react to something like this. And again, as you pointed out, his first full year in the job, he became.
And Goldman shares were up almost
CEO.
40% last year. So,
there you go.
If you put 2019 in a vacuum, I think there are folks who could say that makes sense. But I do think this year is going to be a very different one.
Absolutely. More ahead, we're going to continue our conversation with Michael Ainsley down in Florida, former chairman of Lehman, speaking of the big banks, and get his perspective on where we are and where we may be headed. This is Bloomberg.
And Bloomberg has all the information you need on the coronavirus, both on the radio and online. For all of our latest coverage on COVID-19, head over to Bloomberg.com/coronavirus.
They don't just
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. The National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with little Rocky. Unfortunately, little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Dad wanted to get Mum a beauty treatment for Mother's Day. The kids wanted to do something homemade, so they compromised. And now Mummy's got no eyebrows. Don't compromise. With a Cadbury milk tray, just £2.50, you won't have to. Asda. Selected stores subject to availability, 360 grams.
Yeah, so I want to upgrade to the latest phone you got. Okay. All right. But for an unbelievably good price. Yeah. And I want it where I could choose the length for my own contract. Yeah.
On O2, you're our headline act, which is why you can get the phone you want for less per month with a custom plan on O2.
Minimum upfront cost. Direct only. Device plan of 3 to 36 months. Refresh credit by Telefonica UK Limited. Terms apply.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it?